Hello, hello, your favorite half Chinese, and today we are recording again in Rotterdam, Delfshaven. I'm not sure if I'm still in Delfshaven, near the statue of Piet Hein from the other walking rant. And this is going to be another walking rant. I just decided while I was walking to my friend, God knows where he is, I will record another video. And today we're going to discuss something that we see more and more, especially in the comment sections, what Chinese people are saying with all the attacks on them. What you often will see, and I want the Western people and also especially the Dutch listen very, very carefully to what I'm going to say. And I want you to look in the comment sections. You will see these kind of comments really a lot when it is about the geopolitics between China and the West, especially when China is being attacked by a Western nation. And what you always will see nowadays, a lot of people will say, oh, they think it's the time of the Opium Wars. Or another one, they will say, they think it is 1901. They don't understand that China has been waiting for this. They have been building up for this. Well, normally they just say they think it's still 1901. And I know that a lot of Western people, it doesn't register with you. I do not blame you because you have been held ignorant by the state. Because the state should offer you proper education, especially about your own history. But yeah, I'm also half Western, and I'm born and raised in the West, in the Netherlands. And I have also suffered from being indoctrinated from a very young age in school and have been lied to, not been told our own history. And that is why when I later started to study the history for myself, I came to the conclusion that how much I actually have been lied to all my entire life when I was in school, and later also when I was not in school, through the media, and if you watch politicians, by the politicians. And that's very sad. But this is very important, because this is going to be so important lesson for the people in the West. Because the people in the West have no idea what is coming. And especially when you see more and more of these kind of comments, it is time to wake up. And it's time to wake up because the Chinese are actually signaling to you it's not going to end up well for you if you continue this road. What do I mean by that? Why would they refer to the Opium Wars? That's the first thing, right? Why is a Chinese person referring to an event in 1839? So we're going to dive back into Chinese history, modern Chinese history. Excuse me. In 1839, the Britons was already doing business with China, right? Many other countries were already doing business with China. At that time, China was 1/3 of the world's GDP. So a lot of people in the West are saying, oh, they will come and conquer us because that's what the superpowers do, what the rich countries do. No. We already have the evidence. We have a very large sample of evidence, a larger sample than the existence of my country. Honestly, this sample size that China has of being the leader in the rest of the world with a world GDP of 1/3 of the world's GDP is 1,500 years long. That's 1,500 years long, straight, uninterrupted, right? So we know it is not in China's nature to be so expansionist like the Western powers are, right? We have to be honest here. So we have this sample size, so there's really nothing really that you have to be scared of. Anyway, we're walking besides the water. Maybe I should walk like this, but I'm scared somebody will just pull off my camera and then I have no more camera. Well, I have the small Osmo Nano. It's a really, really nice camera. It's this small, also from DJI. I just have it new, but it's for special uses only. Anyway, that's besides the point. So what happened in 1839? So in short, 1839, in China, they were still on the silver standard. And Europe already changed to the golden standard, right? That's for payments. And at that time, the British discovered tea in China, right? And they kind of got addicted to the tea. Everybody's drinking tea until this very day, right? Everybody knows if you talk about English people, the first thing comes to mind is tea, biscuits, and wars, right? Let's be honest here. They needed to have a lot of silver, and they didn't get any silver by trade because everybody in Europe was in the golden standard. That also meant that they had to ask other European nations to get tea. Now, at that time, China was very, very much self-sufficient. So they didn't need many of the European products. So what you got at that time was a big trade deficit until the British found opium. And then the British started to push opium. So they were actually getting rich off being a drug dealer. And mind you, at that time, the opium was also banned in the UK itself, right? Because they had even wrote researchers how dangerous it was for the health and how a disaster it could be for a country if the people get addicted, right? Yet they just chose to force China to accept their opium and push it upon their people to destroy China. But why did they do that? Is because they first wanted to have all sorts of trade with them, but China was self-sufficient, and many things that were built in or manufactured in the West, they just had no use for, right? Except for some luxury stuff for the ultra-rich. That's all. So there was a trade deficit, and that trade deficit triggered a war. But what exactly is a trade deficit? A trade deficit is very simple. I will walk to my friend now, I will sit down and I will eat something there and I will pay X amount of money. Now we have created a trade deficit, right? Because he never bought something from me, I only bought from him. But it's my choice to buy from him. Should I now force him to buy something from me? Because that's, understand that you always will have a trade deficit. It doesn't exist in an economy to not have a trade deficit. Especially, when you have smaller and bigger countries, right? How come that the Netherlands, should they buy just as much as from the United States as the United States buys from us? It doesn't make any sense, right? We only have 18 million people. But yeah, so it was a trade deficit that resorted them to do illegal things. Now, a lot of people think that back in those days in China, opium was legal. It was not. It was already banned since 1700 something. I don't know the exact year anymore. I can look it up, but I'm not sure anymore. So for almost 100 years, it was already banned in China. There were people that were using it, but not on that scale. And they definitely didn't want their population to become addicted, right? So what did the British do? Push it anyway. And mind you, these are private companies, not government. Because the king sent a letter, or somebody from the emperor sent a letter, and they said, yeah, well, thank you, we don't need your stuff, right? And that angered them. We don't need your stuff, because we just have no use for it. And that angers the British, because they are used to everybody must bow down because, you know, they're white. And that's, I have to see how I have to walk. Because, yes, all right. Going to have to walk like there. Yes. I think I'm on the road now. It's a huge mosque over there. I cannot go in because I'm not a Muslim. I think I'm allowed to go into a mosque, right? Just not in the praying area, I believe. I believe it was something like that. But anyway, we're not going in there. Well, maybe people are praying because in the mosque people are still praying. In the churches in the Netherlands, it's more like an attraction. It has become, right? Very sad, but yeah, that's what happened. So the opium was actually illegal in China. It was not legal. So China started to have a huge problem, right? Now, what did China do? There was a guy, an official, and he came from another area where he had a huge success fighting the opium. And the government at that time sent him to Guangzhou. And in Guangzhou, he started his whole thing, what he did in the other place, to get rid of the opium problem. And also confiscated I believe it was somewhere between the 1.2 hold on, and 1.6 million tons of opium, I think. Yes, or was 1.2, 1.6 kilogram, million kilogram. Was in any way, it was a huge. I will edit it in on the screen. And I will show the mosque while we're passing by. This is the mosque. It's a real big one. So at that time, he confiscated that, and it was from the British. And the British dope dealers were so pissed off that they sent a letter to the Queen. Just imagine a queen that is receiving letters from a dope dealer. And then they went to war. That was the start of the first Opium War. You might think, why would Chinese then use that phrase? What does it have to do with today? Well, today we're having the similar circumstances, right? They're talking about the trade deficit with China, and now they are daily attacking China. So obviously for Chinese people, you bring them back into that mindset. Because mind you, remember that I said in 1839, China was still was still 1/3 of the world's GDP, right? After that, after the British came and looted them for all they had, China was reduced to number 11 poorest nation in the world. Yeah, sorry, I sometimes have to look at my navigation if I'm walking okay. We will see. I have to walk and like that, or can I go straight? I don't know. It looks a little bit weird, the way it tells me to walk, but let's just not listen to the GPS and be stubborn, because that's my nature, being stubborn. Let's just do that. It never ever worked well for me, but we must continue to be stubborn until it works, right? It's kind of the Western mindset, right? Keep doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome. Like all the wars, and we want to get rid of refugees, but we keep maintaining all these wars. Anyway, that's for another subject. So I hope that the Dutch people and all the other Western people start to understand what you actually are doing and how the Chinese people perceive us. Now you might say, oh, but we don't mean like that, all right? It doesn't matter how you mean it. If there are two parties, the other party also matters, because the other party also will take actions and steps. And now you also understand why China is building up a real big army. Because they see something. They see not only one, but several countries attacking them at the same time. And this places us back to the other comment. They think it's 1901 again. We're going to skip the second Opium War. We're going directly to 1901. In 1901, a lot of parts of China were already colonized by the West. And at that time, they were treating the Chinese so badly that they were reduced to like lesser than a dog. There were literally signs, no dogs and Chinese, on the streets in China. Honestly, this is how foul the West was in China. Now the Germans seem to be extremely bad. But I'm going to cut in a little bit because then you have a little bit more understanding. What they did, they forced themselves into the economy of China through wars. So every time that China lost a war, because they were not a war country, so their army was too weak for the army of the West was more superior because they are warring nations. And every time they were forced to do concessions and give concessions, right? And this is also how they colonized Hong Kong, right? That's from the first Opium War. Now they also opened ports and all these kind of things. But what they also did, they brought a lot of their things, like a telegraph. Now, it might seem like it is great, you get telegraph and people can send messages a little bit quicker, but it was not the case in China. It literally destroyed an entire part of the economy. See, how did they send messages back in those days? Was literally through runners. You give a letter to a special runner and he will run to that place that it needs to be delivered. That's really how it went. So when those telegraph poles came, those people were instantly out of a job. And all the telegraph poles, all those businesses, were in the hands of white people. It was not for the people in the land, right? So that also created a lot of extra poverty, right? You're pushing people out of business. So now you understand about the Poles. So what happened in right before 1901? You had the Boxers' Rebellion. Boxers' Rebellion was basically a group of Kung Fu fighters, and some thought they had some special skills that they could stop bullets or whatever. Anyway, they were extremely brave. And they decided to fight against the oppression of the foreigners in China. And that started in the part near Qingdao, I believe, in that area where the Germans were occupying. Because the Germans seems to be particularly bad. Now, mind you, these were normal, ordinary citizens. And they started to fight for their country and for their livelihoods, which was being destroyed by those Western hoodlums who were protected by the state. And just imagine, those Western nations, their governments were supporting drugs dealers with their armies. Just imagine, just think of this. Just imagine if you have a kid and they will send your kid over to another nation to protect their drugs transports and murder other people on behalf of drugs dealers. Just let that sink in. This is exactly what they did. And this is true fascism. It's totally imperialistic fascism, right? The state working so closely with the corporates and let their own people lose their lives over these kind of things. Because the normal ordinary citizens didn't get anything. Europe, most people were just poor, right? In my country, what they call the golden age, the people were just literally eating, the flower roots. Just literally that. We call it flower balls, but I'm not sure how to, the thing that you grow flowers off. Anyway, so that was our golden age, not really that golden, right? I know I have to walk over there, but there was only a biking place, so I had to cross the road. So what happened then? At that time, that the Westerners saw the rebellion coming up, they started to bond together and formed the Eighth Alliance. And with the Eighth Alliance, they brought their armies over to China. But the Eighth Alliance was not alone. Like my country, the Netherlands, when they heard they could join a war in China, they also joined, although they were not officially a part of the Eighth Alliance. So they went, and again, China was weak. Their army was useless, right? I think they still fought many things with swords, bows, etc. You cannot fight that against guns, right? And of course they lost again. And then came the Boxers Protocol, which basically destroyed them all, and a lot of very bad things happened, and they had to pay more indemnities. So China had 3 wars in a row without them actually having attacked any of them, right? They've never been to Europe to attack us. And we went to over there, and just because we could steal, we went and steal. This is the mindset of Europe. This is the European mindset. If they can steal, they will steal. This is our history. Yeah, right? And this is always has been the case. And this is why, when you see in certain comments now, that you will see comments of Chinese people, they think it's 1901. And this is also why, and remember why China is building up its military this good and this strong. Because they know eventually the time will come again, as it always has been doing, because the Netherlands and other Western nations have no interest in becoming a civilization. What I mean by that, they are still in their barbaric state of warfare. They don't like being civilized. They don't like to get along with the rest of the world. They want to have it all. This is a very typical European mindset, and I have no idea how that came about, because honestly, before they were fighting China, they also were fighting each other, right? This always has been the case ever since the whole start. They've been lying, cheating, having wars all the time, constantly. And it's really sad for me to say, because I'm also half European, and who wants to have that kind of a history, right? Everybody wants to have something, I can be proud of my country. I definitely cannot be proud of the Netherlands. I mean, it never has done anything for humanity. It's just, honestly, not even doing anything for its own people, right? Let alone for humanity. But yeah, that was actually what I wanted to talk about. And maybe you can understand China a little bit better now. If you look at it from their perspective, and you see these exact nations that were invading China in 1901 are now the exact nations that are forging military alliances to attack China yet again. It is exact these nations that are day in, day out demonizing China and dehumanizing the Chinese people. It is exact these nations that day in, day out are finding ways to steal from China yet again. An example of last from my country, Nexperia, right? How my government stole Nexperia. So try to understand how the mindset of the Chinese people will be. Ah, you come again. All these events have led to China becoming under the leadership of the party of the Communist Party of China. And now you understand why they wanted to have them. If you understand communism. You probably don't understand communism. What am I trying to say? Communism is the antidote on imperialism and capitalism. Well, imperialism is the highest state of capitalism. And it also is rooting out, it's also the enemy of fascism, right? Now you also understand why they are hating all the communist countries so much. I'm talking about the West. Because the West is imperialistic and fascist, right? Neoliberals. It's exactly what it is. So, yeah. Anyway, it is not that the communist nation would do anything to harm us. No. But anyway, we're not going, that's for a whole other video, right? Let's just save that for a whole other video. This is already quite long, yeah. Let's just keep it here. I hope this history is going to clear a little bit up for the people and also for the Dutch, right? Because yes, officially we were not a part of the 8th Alliance, and that makes it for me even worse, right? I mean, if you were a part, like it's a part of NATO, like the 8th Alliance, I always say is the birth of NATO, because those were the exact same people, minus Russia, because at that time Russia was also one country that was invading, because at that time it was also imperialistic. So yeah, that was actually it. I just wanted to clarify that. I hope that Western people start to think now a little bit and start to think of the consequences, because the Communist Party of China has promised to the people this will never ever happen again.